When I saw my grandson on the stage of the Bolshoi Theatre in Russia receiving a standing ovation, my heart almost stopped. He took the microphone and said, "I thank my parents for paying every cent of this dream." I was sitting on the torn sofa in my living room, with the electricity cut off, holding the sale receipt for my only house. He didn't know, but that trip to Russia cost much more than money. It cost me my life. And on that day, I decided it was time for him to know the truth. I always knew Lucas had golden hands. Since he was little, when he picked up his grandfather's old violin, the house filled with light. I am Mrs. Elvira. I'm 74 years old, and my greatest joy was seeing that boy play. But living in Brazil and dreaming of Russia, it seemed impossible. My children, his parents, they always said art didn't fill bellies. They laughed, but I saw the shine in my grandson's eyes. It was the only pure thing left in my life. When the acceptance letter for the school in Moscow arrived, the house turned into a hell. My son, Lucas's father, tore the envelope on the table. "Who is going to pay for this? You, with that miserable pension. That hurt more than a slap in the face." Lucas cried all night. He said, "Grandma, I'm going to give up." In that moment, I made a decision. I had an inherited house, small, but it was all I had. I sold it. I sold it without telling anyone. I handed the money to my son and said, "Say that you were the one who got a loan. The boy cannot know that I'm left homeless." My son took the money, smiled, and said, "You finally served for something." Lucas went to Russia, and the silence began. At first he called, then only messages, then nothing. My son and daughter-in-law changed their lives with the rest of the money, which I discovered later they didn't send entirely to the boy. They bought a new car, clothes, and me. I went to live in a small back room, out of charity. Every time I asked about Lucas, my daughter-in-law said, "He is very busy with the cold in Russia, Elvira. He doesn't have time for old people." 5 years passed. 5 Russian winters and 5 winters in my heart. Then he returned. The great violinist. They threw a welcome dinner. I put on my best dress, the one from 20 years ago. When I arrived in the living room, Lucas was there, handsome, elegant. He looked like a Russian prince. I opened my arms. He looked at me, looked away, and continued talking to a businessman. My daughter-in-law whispered in my ear, "Don't embarrass us. Stay in the kitchen." I went. But I took with me the old violin case he had left behind. In the middle of the toast, when my son, full of false pride, raised his glass to say, "We sacrificed everything for you," son, I entered the room. The silence was icy, colder than Siberia. I placed the old violin on the table. "Labubus," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "Before you go back to Moscow, open the false bottom of this case." He laughed, embarrassed. "Grandma, that's old. Open it," I shouted. For the first time in my life, I shouted. He opened it. Inside, there was no money. There was the deed to my sold house. The bank statements in my son's name siphoning off the value, and a letter I wrote the day he left saying, Fly high, my grandson. Your grandmother will be fine, even without a roof. Lucas read the paper. His hands, which played difficult songs, were shaking. He looked at his parents. My son's face went pale. You said Grandma didn't want to help, Lucas whispered. You said she was stingy. Lucas looked at me. Tears were falling. He didn't care about the guests. He ran and knelt at my feet. That big man, crying like a boy. He threw all the self-interested friends out of the party. He looked at his parents and said, "From today on, the one who takes care of her is me and you. Don't even deserve her last name. Today I write this from my new house. Not in Russia, but right here, in a house Lucas bought for me. He's taking me to Moscow next month. He says he wants me to see the snow. I learned that true love doesn't need applause, but the truth always finds a way to play its music. Have you ever made a sacrifice that no one recognized? Write here in the comments, I know my worth. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, because here the truth always comes out.